Today, I want to talk about how lawyers use a strong network in order to influence decisions. I'm sure most of you have heard the phrase before, a good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge. Well, there is some truth to that, some falsehood, but some truth as well. And I want to talk to you about both of those. And again, how a good lawyer and how you as well can use your network to influence decisions, both in the business world and in your personal life. Thank you everybody for tuning in. My name is Joe Pometto, Joe the Lawyer. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. It is a free way to support this channel, and I'm trying to grow this channel. Here on this channel, I cover occasional legal news. I give tips on how to use lawyer skills to improve your life or your business, and I also give some legal tips. Again, if you like the channel, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Now, before we dig in, everybody who watches my channels, raise your cup, your glass in the air. You know you take a sip with me because it tastes better when we sip together. Cheers. So, how lawyers use a strong network to influence decisions. Well, first of all, you have to have a network, right? You have to have a network before you can use this strategy. So I'm going to make a video after this in order to tell you how lawyers build a strong network, but we're going to start with this video with the basis, the foundation that you already have a network. So what does that mean? Well, in the lawyer world, that means that you are friends with, or people know, like, and respect you. I think that's what having a network means, with other people in your field, in the case of lawyers in the legal world. So I primarily do criminal defense, and these people that I consider a part of my network are other lawyers, of course, judges, the court staff, but in addition to that, police officers that I have worked with, etc. And I try my best to make sure that I leave each interaction or leave each case with a good feeling, or at least a good taste in the mouth, to the degree that I can, with all of these individuals. So they walk away, they deal with me again, they are not going to dread it, or they're not going to hate me and make my life more difficult. So we're going to assume that I know these judges, right? And some of the judges I know very well. Some judges I went to law school with, and some I only know on a professional basis. But many of them know me and they like me. Same with a lot of the lawyers, court staff, and even police that I've worked with. And remember, I am often opposed to the police. So we're going to assume that this network exists, right? And in my own life, my own personal career as a practicing criminal defense lawyer in Pittsburgh, this does exist. I know, again, a lot of the judges, etc. And so I have this network. Now, how does this network benefit me on my cases or in my professional life? Well, before I get into that, let me say first that generally having this network in any professional venture is not going to be able to move mountains. So let's go back to a good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge. Well, if a lawyer knows the judge on a murder case, right, where somebody killed a loved one in a rage of madness, or let's say there was a gangland shooting and one guy in a gang shot another guy in a gang, or let's say it's even worse than that, some sort of serial killer. All right, when it comes to murder or very, very serious crimes, this strategy that I'm talking about, or this influence that you have, generally is not going to help, right? On these really big, very serious matters. You're not going to be able to move mountains. Now, maybe back in the day, and specifically with lawyers 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago, you could move mountains. Back then, there wasn't as much transparency. Back then, there wasn't as much light shining in on everything. This is 2025, with all the surveillance that exists now. What I mean by that is just cell phones, emails, text messages, the communication. There's a sharp eye on everything that people do, especially in the public square. So you can't do the things that people used to do 20, 30 years ago, right? I get calls from clients, and they got charged with a DUI, and they say, Joe, how much money is it going to take for me to make this disappear? And I say to them, so what are you saying to me? You want to give me $20,000 and then I put that in the pocket of the judge, and then the judge is going to make the case disappear? I'm sorry. If these things happen, okay, in my opinion, they're very rare. And I'm not saying that they don't happen. They probably do, but they're very rare. And I don't do it. And that's not what I'm talking about here, right? I'm not talking about this kind of backdoor stuff to kind of move mountains. But I am talking about how your network and knowing these people, okay, can help you get better decisions and influence decisions in a perfectly transparent and legal way. And so your question to me, Joe, is we'll explain that. How does that work? Well, what I'm talking about is the close calls. The close calls. So some decisions are very, very tough, right? Some decisions, and put yourself in the perspective of a judge. Some decision when somebody's been brutally murdered and there's a lot of evidence against them, no matter who knows the judge is going to find that person guilty, okay? It's just not humanly possible to move those sorts of mountains. But some decisions are much more difficult. And some decisions come down to very, very close calls. And in these extremely close calls, right, if a judge is sitting there and has to make a decision about whether or not, the light was green or red, when you have opposing witness testimony and a reasonable person could lean either way, in those situations, I do believe that having a good relationship with that judge, having a good relationship with that decision maker may in fact push the needle. Now, nobody's going to come in your favor. Now, nobody's going to come out and say that directly, right? And back to my prior point about moving mountains. In 2025, decision makers are keenly aware of the appearance of bias. Keenly aware of the appearance of any bias, whether that's being biased towards a friend, being biased based on a political association, being biased based on coming from the same neighborhood, whatever. Everybody wants to avoid that appearance of giving favors, of being biased. But in the really, really close decisions, that is where having a strong network can benefit. So let me give a couple of examples. So I had a case where a client the evidence was very, very strong against him. And we made the decision. He wanted to go to trial. We made the decision to go to trial, but we decided not to make a whole big show of the trial, right? And again, the evidence was kind of overwhelming against him in certain ways. And I signaled, to this judge, because in a trial, you can have a jury make a decision, or you can have the judge make the decision when it comes to guilt and innocence. And I spoke to my client and I said, I think with this judge, if we just do the trial before the judge, you may get a better result than if you do the trial with the jury. And what happened was we did the trial with the judge. The judge found the person guilty, but then ended up giving him a very, very favorable sentence. And that was based on my knowledge of the judge, my relationship with the judge, understanding the judge. And I was able to communicate this to the client. And so my network, me having that network and understanding what we were doing in that courtroom allowed for that result. And yes, we didn't move mountains, right? He wasn't found not guilty. but the penalty that he got was very, very small. Because I knew the judge and I knew the lawyers and I knew the court staff that was involved. Let me give you one other example. I had a client who was accused of causing an accident where some people were injured, minor injuries, but they were still charged with a crime for causing this accident. And I went to the courthouse to have this hearing. And number one, I've known the judge for many, many years. And number two, the police officer on the case. I got to talking to this police officer, and we talked about a whole bunch of things for about a half an hour. We got to know each other a little bit. We had some past common ties. And so my client shows up, and the judge says, all right, well, let's have this hearing. And we have this hearing. And the judge listened to my client and listened to my argument. And despite our relationship, he really wasn't feeling what my client had to say. So then the judge looked over at the police officer and said that a police officer, because I asked for a reduction in the charge, are you okay with this? And the officer gave a couple of reasons and said yes. And if I hadn't set the tone with that officer beforehand, or if I came in and I acted like a jerk right off the bat, then things might not have went that way for my client. So those are two situations where having that network helped me get a better result than I believe somebody who didn't have that network would get, or at least the sort of social skills that I employed. If the lawyer doesn't use those skills, you may not get that same result. And I believe that this principle of having this network, and generally, and look, you're not going to be friends with everybody, right? But generally leaving a good taste in everybody's mouth. And again, not even always being friends with these people, but just having them like, know, and respect you, and leaving a good taste every time you've dealt with them can help lead to favorable results. In my opinion, in my knowledge, I believe you can apply this to any business. You can apply this to real estate. You are going to deal with other agents. You're going to deal with mortgage companies, title companies, closing companies, etc. And having a good taste in all of them, they might help you push through deals that other agents couldn't get pushed through. Or they may find something on your particular sale that they wouldn't have pointed out to somebody else that they didn't like. It can make people go the extra mile that can give you better results. When I used to work as a waiter in restaurants many, many years ago, I worked in restaurants for probably between 5 and 8 years of my life at various points. The same principle applied, right? I made sure that the cooks liked me and knew me, because if they liked me and I knew their first names and I talked to them at times, then when I needed a dish up like that because the last one came out bad or some kid, spilled a Coke on mom's dinner, all right, I was able to get it. Hey, Bill, I'm in a bind. Help me out. The dishwashers, the bus boys, the same thing. The bartenders, I made sure everybody liked me because then when I needed a favor, I could call it in. But remember, those relationships aren't going to move worlds for you, but they are going to help you in the close calls in these small situations. And when you add all of that up, it is like moving the world. It is like moving a mountain. So that's why I think you want a strong network, and you can use your strong network to influence decisions in your favor. Now, I will make a video on how to build that network, and perhaps you saw I gave you a little bit of advice a minute ago, but I'm going to make a whole video on how I've built my network without even going to great lengths. You don't have to put this tremendous amount of time into it. It can help to do some of these extra things, but you don't have to put this tremendous amount of time that some networkers make you think you do. All right. Look for my next video, how to build a network like a lawyer. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. My name is Joe Pometto, Joe the Lawyer. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share, trying to grow the channel. Thank you very much. Cheers.